It's Thursday morning. I think this is the 21st of May. My watch is correct. It's about 10 o'clock. I'm out here kind of looking things over a little bit. You might notice the denim shirt, which means I'm hoping to spray. It seems like this field is fairly dry, so I think I can get across it without causing too much problems. I really was hoping to spray it later, both because it maybe has a little lower weed pressure and because this is kind of where the corn got dinged the worst by the frost. But I think I may end up starting here because it's the driest and hopefully be able to run some other stuff later this afternoon. Might go take a look at a couple other fields this morning and see if they've dried a lot since last night. It seemed like this one was the driest previously, and the terrace that I just walked down into over here didn't seem too wet compared to the other stuff that I was in yesterday either. So I think that this maybe is the safest bet. There's still chances of drizzle this morning. I've not seen or felt it precipitate, but I've mostly been watching from inside, so not real sure what the situation is. The risk if it gets rained on after you spray is that you wash the herbicide off and then don't kill things. So would like to avoid that, but also would really like to get some stuff done because there's a small chance I might be able to spray some tomorrow, but that seems like kind of a long shot with where the precipitation chances are. And I've got quite a bit of corn to cover and weeds coming probably quickly, especially if it warms up next week. It's just after 5 o'clock on Thursday afternoon and we are spraying some corn. I'm on the second load, so I got about a little over 40 acres sprayed. But the field that I was in was kind of small and required a lot of turning and lifting booms over fences and stuff. So I waited till I was in this one to try to take any video. The field was mostly dry. There was definitely some spots that were wetter than would have been ideal, but I was able to get through everything without any trouble, and at least I'm able to get something done. Not necessarily able to spray the fields that I would most like to spray, but at least if I have a small window next week, hopefully I'll be able to get stuff finished up, assuming I'm probably not able to run tomorrow. I'm hoping I can get one more load off after this one. This field is pretty wide open, so it goes pretty quickly, but we'll have to see how things are looking. It's pretty cloudy, and I think there's some chances of showers coming in overnight. I don't think it's until later, so there's some hope, but it's going to be pretty hard to spray after dark and see what I'm doing. So the corn's just too small. I mean, I can see it pretty well in the daylight, but I think it would be pretty hard to tell where I'm at driving at night. I guess as long as I can get a field started before it gets dark, I can probably drive off the monitor, but I kind of need to be able to see the marker track and be able to count rows to get the first couple passes on. I have a couple options of where I can go next after this, so we'll see exactly how we come out time-wise and then go from there. Definitely not going to get everything right. I would be surprised if I get everything sprayed this week. If we miss rain tomorrow, I might, but that's probably a long shot. But hopefully I can get enough done that I'll be able to finish up in pretty short order next week. It's probably going to be the middle of the week before things dry off the way the forecast looks now, but it is what it is. Sometimes when I spray, there's not really much that's alive to kill, and I do feel like I'm getting something done today because there's a fair number of weeds out here. Nothing real big, but definitely quite a bit in areas. I don't know if you'll be able to see much on the camera or not. There's not a ton right here, but I just went through a low spot. There was quite a few. I didn't get started real early today, partly because I took all the nozzles off the boom, the spray tips, and cleaned them up, and that took a little bit longer than I was anticipating. One thing I did notice, so when I planted the first field, I didn't have any sideways offset on the planter, and it seemed like my guess row was off a little bit, and I changed that here, and it seems like it's pretty good. However, it doesn't seem like my rows are perfectly straight. I suspect that that's because of the calibration on the tractor that I used to plant with. Sorry, I had to raise the boom a little bit. but there's definitely some wave going through the field. I don't know if it was apparent. I should have pointed it out earlier in the video. See if I can turn around one-handed here, though. Might be easier said than done. So I got to raise up to not whack the beam on that. And then I got to get turned back into my next pass. Get the spray on before I cross the indros. Get my boom back down. Switch the foam marker to this side. And throttle up. But as I was saying, the rows, even with RTK, are not as perfectly straight as I would like them to be. And I think that that's probably the auto steer calibration on the tractor. Definitely going to have to look into that. It seemed like it was easier to see going the other direction into the light, maybe. You can maybe see some up there kind of going up to that next knob. It's not bad. I mean, it's not bad to drive for spraying, and it'll be fine combining, but it's not perfectly arrow straight like it should be with the planter tractor running on RTK. So for the most part, I mean, I'm happy with the way everything worked out and planting into the anhydrous tracks for sure, but there is some fine tuning yet to do on that whole operation. It's about 8:45 Friday morning, May 22nd, I believe, and it's drizzling. I thought there was maybe a little bit of a chance that I'd be able to get up early this morning and get one more load sprayed. It doesn't look very likely. It hasn't rained a large quantity yet, so if it stopped, there would be some chance I might be able to get a load on before the thunderstorms this afternoon. However, the problem is that drizzle like this doesn't really show up on the radar, so you can't tell when it's coming. And that's kind of a complicating factor. I think the more likely scenario is that I may try to do a little bit of spot spraying with a four-wheeler, because I can get across stuff pretty easily with that without leaving tracks or causing too much damage, and that way it'll be, you know, $10 worth of herbicide instead of hundreds of dollars worth of herbicide if it gets rained off, and try to hit some of the spots where I have big weeds. I didn't do a video at the end of the day yesterday because it was getting fairly dark, but thought I would do a little bit of a show and tell on the spray tips. One of the clips that I took yesterday mentioned that I spent a couple hours kind of cleaning the tips all out. Hope this doesn't drip a ton. Basically, these yellow tips are the ones that we use for most of our pre-emerge herbicides and stuff that is systemic. So there's basically two types of herbicides that kill weeds that are out of the ground. Systemic herbicides and contact herbicides. So a systemic herbicide, you just have to get a minimum dosage on the plant, and it'll die. So like Roundup or mesotrione, like Callisto and stuff like that. Most growth regulator herbicides, like dicamba 2,4-D, are all systemic. So basically, if I'm a weed and I get herbicide on my arm, I die. The other type of herbicide is a contact herbicide, which basically depends on coating the entire plant with a level of the herbicide. So for soybeans, we use Liberty, sort of as an alternate mode of action, and there's pros and cons and stuff with that. But we use different tips for that to provide better coverage. And that's the blue tips on here, or blue and dirt colored, that we use for Liberty, with a higher amount of water carrier to be able to kill stuff. However, the advantage to the yellow tips like these, so this is what's called an air induction nozzle, and it basically has a little hole, or actually two little holes on the sides, which you can kind of see light through there if I get the camera exactly the right spot. But essentially it sucks air into the droplets and does sort of like, I don't want to say like a sprinkling, but basically sort of spits more than creates a mist. So you have larger droplets, and that helps with drift if there's any wind, so that hopefully, you know, those droplets have more mass and go to the ground faster, so that you don't ding waterways or adjacent crops or anything like that. However, I don't know if it'll be super apparent in here. Yeah, you can almost see some of the white. Basically, so there's this black cap and then an O-ring that seals that onto the nozzle body. But you can see kind of the small yellow piece that sticks up in the middle, and then there's kind of a cavity around that, which it seems has a tendency to kind of collect sediment from the dry flowable herbicides. So a lot of the herbicides that we use for pre-emerge on soybeans and then also atrazine on corn can sort of settle out, and I wanted to try to clean that out. I don't know if it actually matters because it seems like it has settled in, and I didn't spray that much yesterday, and the atrazine that I did spray was in liquid form before I mixed it in the sprayer, at least. But it also seemed like some of the oily mixes, even just between yesterday and today, there's quite a bit of dirt residue that's stuck to the nozzles, and it seemed like there was kind of some stuff that might be obscuring those holes and affecting the pattern a little bit. So I thought that it would be not a bad idea to try to clean those up just so that we didn't get any of the soybean herbicide getting mixed in with the corn spray and potentially dinging the corn. Probably wouldn't hurt it significantly, but could have some visual effects. And also to try to make sure that we had the best pattern possible to kill the stuff that's up. So that ended up taking a little bit longer than I anticipated because digging the crap out of that little cavity required a little more effort than I had hoped it would. But we at least had the nozzles clean for half of the day. Other than that, it sounds like it's going to rain for the next few days, so probably not going to be doing a lot of farming going into Memorial Day weekend, so I guess that's a good time to take a break anyway. Since there's not a lot else productive to be done right now, I did notice when I was spraying yesterday a couple of gaps in spots that I didn't like. So this is one of them. I'm not sure, like we're on the sort of the back slope of the terrace, and I'm not sure if the drive wheel on the planter lost contact with the ground. It shouldn't have because we're pretty well lined up on the bank here, but I seem to have about a, I don't know, 12 or 15 foot gap, which is definitely going to cause a weed control problem. So I took some of the extra seed, which is actually from last year, but I think it's a little shorter season than what I had left in the hoppers at the end of the season this year, and is also a hybrid that dries down pretty fast. And I'm going to take the antique hoe here from my mother's garden tool collection, and we're going to spot in a few plants here. Probably not going to do full population because that would take forever, but try to get at least a few in here so that we hopefully have a little better weed control, or at least not a huge weed control problem. We say this is 1/100 of an acre, or maybe a little bit more than that. 1/100 of an acre is not going to be very much corn yield wise, but that could be a whole lot of water hemp seeds if we have 1/100 of an acre of water hemp in the middle of the field, which will then spread out and cause problems for many years. So that's basically what we're trying to stop. So this is the other spot that I'm going to fix. It's actually not as bad as I thought maybe it was from the tractor cab, and it took me a little bit to find it. But I think what happened here probably is that I ran out of seed, but I was still getting enough that it wasn't firing the alarm that it wasn't planting. And I didn't know that I had a gap here, and then didn't overlap to get it filled in. So I'm going to put a few more seeds in this area. Again, not because it's going to make me any money on the yield, but that maybe it has a chance to make me some money on not having as much weed control problems or as much weed problems in future years. It's about 2:30 in the afternoon now, and I was able to get a load sprayed. It kind of cleared off and didn't look like there was anything coming, and managed to miss the drizzle. It's kind of getting cloudier again now. It doesn't look too dark, but I need about an hour or so after I finish spraying to be rain fast in order to kill things without rinsing off the chemical, or rinsing off the chemical so that the weeds don't die. So I think I'm probably going to not push my luck any further and park the sprayer. I just have probably a little over 80 acres that I haven't sprayed yet, and what's left I'm gonna try to one pass. There's not too many weeds there now, so I think I'll be pretty okay on everything. I was able to hit the patch where the barnyard was on this farm where I had a bunch of weeds coming with the last 20 gallons or whatever that I had left over of juice. So overall, pretty happy with how everything played out. Obviously would have preferred if we'd had a little nicer weather for spraying, as had been predicted earlier in the week, but at least we got something done. And hopefully if I can get a decent day this coming week, I can get stuff wrapped up. It's about 3:30, and I got some late lunch and was working on picking up some things, chemical jugs, and putting away the mixing pitcher, whatever you want to call it, measuring cup, and filled up the foam marker tank and was going to fuel up the tractor here, and I noticed it's starting to sprinkle. I don't know if those will show up on the video. It looks like on the radar the rain is definitely coming. I don't know if it's going to amount to too much right now, but there's several chances the next few days. Kind of glad I didn't try to get another load spread though, because I think there's a good chance that we're going to get a shower at least here. So I think I'm going to get this thing fueled up and hopefully not get too wet, and then put her in the shed and head off for Memorial Day weekend and see what happens and try to get the rest of everything sprayed next week.